Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. Armed Forces members of Reddit. What's one story from boot camp that you'll never forget? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
A kid from Detroit I'll call Leotis. Even after 6 weeks of marching parties and push-ups, the Navy failed to beat the smartass out of that kid. He wore his cover at a rakish angle, marched like he was sashaying up and down 8 Mile, and had a smart remark for everything around him. I was impressed at his ability to suffer so much punishment without breaking. Then around week 7, a very attractive female officer walked past our marching company. Leotis just could not contain himself. He catcalled her from the ranks. "Ooh, baby, y'all looking fine. Woo-wee!" She called our company to a halt. She and the company commander pulled Leotis out of the ranks. She tore him up and down while he smiled at attention. She could see she was making no headway. Chief marched him off somewhere. The female officer gave us all a quick reminder of what a f***ing officer is and what a f***ing recruit is, and how the two relate. We gave her yes ma'ams and avoided any more conflict. Never saw Leotis again. I wonder if he ever graduated, or if he went right back to Detroit. He may have been a shitty recruit, but he was a tough nut to crack. We helped a dude go AWOL during basic training. He was a weird dude and wasn't super popular with the other guys in the platoon. We caught him crying in his bunk one night after lights out. Turns out his grandmother had died that week and he wasn't allowed to go home for the funeral because she wasn't his immediate family. Mother, father, siblings. Turns out, she raised him though, and he was contemplating running off. Later that week, we all scrounged up whatever cash we had and gave it to another guy in our platoon. We were in Fort Benning, Georgia, and the guy happened to be from that very town, and his wife lived a few miles off post. We set it up so she'd come by in the middle of the night. We'd open the bay doors, which set off an alarm, and he ran out and jumped in her car. She drove him to the bus station, and he bought a bus ticket home. Never heard from the guy again, but I hope he's doing alright. We decorated our drill instructor's office in the middle of the night before his birthday. Pink balloons, pink streamers, and a big pink cake. He found it about 10 minutes before morning PT. Made for a rough PT session, but worth it. Then, figuring he'd taught us a lesson, he ordered the class to the mess hall. We marched everywhere as a group, with one of us calling cadence. The guy calling cadence did a little marching rendition of Happy Birthday to You, as we were walking away, which sent him back into meltdown. We found ourselves back in the grass doing push-ups while he yelled at us about respect. As a rule, push-ups were always done in unison, and we had to shout teamwork on the way down and discipline on the way up. Halfway through his speech, he realized we were yelling happy and birthday instead. At this point, he just gave up and let us go. My own. I was in the U.S. Air Force boot camp, and I was on duty as dorm guard. We had a list next to the locked door to the dorm. The way it worked was the TI or DI and other services would come up to the door, knock, I'd check his ID, compare it to the list of either let him in or reject. Our TIs would try hard to get us to open the door for them without proper authorization. If you did, you could be recycled, which meant you went back 2 weeks in training and had to move dorms. This day, my TI tried to get me to let him in. Bam, bam, bam. Me. Sir, may I help you? TI. Oh my god, it's freaking everybody's bastard. Open the door. Me. Sir, may I see your authority to enter? TI. You want to see that shit? Here. Holds up a banana. Me. Holds up finger to banana. Banana. Drags finger down, names on list. Sir, may I refer you to the commander's support staff? TI. No, you may not. Open this damn door, everybody's bastard. Pounds the door for another 20 seconds, then lets himself in with a key. TI. Good job. But if I had had some cookies, you'd let me in. We had a female RDC, an Airedale of some flavor. She was pretty easygoing overall. She'd try to get mad, but really you could tell that it was all an act. Except once. Early on, before we'd successfully weeded out all of our idiots, we had a few people rolled back into our division. Space was so tight, there were extra racks down the center of the barracks. That's how many people we had. So, we're all sitting up forward in the compartment for training, and in walks our RDC. First time she'd been with us since this group rolled back, and as soon as she starts giving commands, up pops this one jackass who'd been rolled to us. I'll give him credit. He was about as respectful and polite as he could possibly be about saying it, but he told our RDC that he could not take orders from a woman, that was just how he was raised. I'm surprised he lived to be separated. There was a guy in our division that spoke pretty fluent Russian, not ancestry or anything, just learned Russian in college. So for the first couple of weeks, he'd reply in Russian as a joke, but our RDC told him to only speak in Russian for the duration of boot camp unless told otherwise. During battle stations, he said something in English and was smoked because of it, but other than that, he kept it up. RDC even brought a YN who spoke Russian to see if he really was saying real stuff and not gibberish. Marine Corps Recruit Depot San Diego very early on in the cycle. It's early morning. We're marching in formation to the chow hall. It's dark, and I am the leftmost of 4 marching columns, close to one of our drill instructors. There's a rather overweight recruit in front of me. This young man's recruiting command let him come to training before he was ready, but he's here now, and the DI walking next to him is sizing him the fuck up. After maybe 15 long seconds of contemplation, the DI leans in and hisses, "Boy, I'm gonna sweat the Crisco out of you." I snorted and was righteously screamed at for losing my bearing.
So, as some of you know, I was a U.S. Marine, and reading these, it's pretty incredible to me to hear people like sneaking out to consummate in the night. Marine Corps boot camp, I went to Paris Island, so San Diego, slightly different, but so I'm only talking about my experience. We wrote letters for a half hour at night, senior drill instructor time. You got 2 opportunities to call home. If you knock somebody out in hitting skills, which is the first week of boot camp, and if you shot expert on the rifle range. And it was a collect call and a payphone. I shot expert on the rifle range, and I got to make a collect call home, and my parents were bowling. But I did, and made my drill instructor happy. I think only 4 of us shot expert, and I'd never fired a gun before boot camp. Other than that, all we did was get thrashed. So the 2 Marine Corps stories in here were simple. No drama or getting people pregnant, because we didn't. I see some female Marine recruits at the chow hall, but they were 4th Battalion. Anyway, none of this really makes sense to you guys. Paris Island was rough, and it was no daycare, I'll tell you that much. So, sounds like the Army and Air Force and Navy. I know we always fight between branches of service. You guys had it pretty good. Paris Island, not so much.
Chicago, dead of winter. We have a guy go AWOL. He jumped out of a 2nd-story window into a snowbank and went to MCD's. He turned himself in after his meal, so I heard but cannot confirm. As a punishment to the rest of us, we had PT in our barracks when our drill instructor says it's time to make it snow. So inside the barracks sleeping quarters, the air is humid from all the sweat, and he opens all the windows, and it begins to snow. Smelly sweat snow. Linens, clothes, floor, covered, just awful. And of course, then it was cleanup time. Not funny at the time, but funny now looking back. We were like 3rd or 4th week in Army basic training, which is pretty much nothing but the shooting ranges. When you come off the range, you're supposed to be searched for ammo, but complacency is a thing, and it's a half-assed search. Well, the kid was being a pickup as usual one morning, and chow, and when the drill sergeant got on his ass about it, he started giving him the death stare, which pisses off the drill sergeant even more. After the ass chewing and punishment, they told us to go get our shit ready to go to the range. Typically, this kid was the last to do anything, but that day he was the first to go upstairs after chow, which we kinda joked about. Maybe he needed to take a shit because we never saw him move that fast. Can't find this fucking kid, and we're running late. Guy goes to check the latrine, and he's dead in there, apparently, and screams for DS. DS runs in there, comes out, and tells me to call 911. But their little office was locked, so I couldn't. I didn't see him, but the guy who did was pretty fucked up for a while. The guy who killed himself was kind of a piece of shit the whole time, starting fights, stealing shit, getting us in trouble. I was not upset he was gone. Apparently, he had stolen rounds off the range and was about a second away from killing the drill sergeant, but we decided not to, for whatever reason. We didn't see that DS for a few weeks. Searches after the range took hours after this incident. Several people pissed themselves waiting to be searched and cleared. We didn't train for weeks due to CID investigation, which sucked. We just cleaned the barracks, went to chow, then cleaned the barracks some more. Very tedious, and it made us have to stay that much longer before we could graduate. We were in the second phase of training, which meant we were at the range. Half of the recruits would fire in the morning, half in the afternoon, with a break for chow in between. One of my good friends was singing to himself under his breath while he was pulling out the contents of his MRE. One of the drill instructors, Drill Instructor A, overheard him and demanded to know who it was. This recruit was singing, he sheepishly replied, knowing full well what was to come. Oh, we want to sing, huh? Tight. Hope you like dirt, the drill instructor replied, a twinkle in his eye, knowing he was about to make a recruit's life hell. Another drill instructor B from another platoon in the company, overhears the commotion and wants to know what is happening. Recruit X wants to sing, Drill Instructor A replies. Drill Instructor B, being a bit more experienced and a bit more cunning, has something else in mind. Standard IT. Tell me who you were singing to, he demands. Recruit X is sitting next to Recruit Y. He tells the drill instructor that he was singing to Recruit Y. A devilish smile crosses the face of Drill Instructor B, who orders both Recruit X and Y to undo the clips of their Kevlar helmets. He then ordered them to clip into one another's Kevlars, Recruit X's male end into Y's female end and vice versa. At this point, the two recruits are clipped into one another's helmets. Their faces are close enough to the point where they are practically Eskimo kissing. Drill Instructor B, satisfied with his work, practically whispers into Recruit X's ear, "Now sing." Without missing a beat, Recruit X begins to belt out "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." I lost my bearing and got sent to the dirt, but it was completely worth it. He also says it was worth it. Those were the kinds of things that made boot camp bearable. Navy here. We had a guy in our division who was a total deadweight. Let's call him Bare End. From day one, he was always either an SIQ, laying in bed, or LLD. Nothing more strenuous than walking. It wouldn't have been a big deal, but he was constantly falling asleep during any sort of training we had. The rest of us were out marching and doing other shit all day, while Bare End laid in his rack getting all rest he could ever want. After we passed the halfway point, it became obvious that Bare End was a lost cause, and he was going to be ASMO'd, signed memorandum sent back in training, and separated so our RDCs stopped punishing us for his cups and generally just stopped giving a shit about him. Anyway, one afternoon we're in the compartment suffering death by PowerPoint. Everyone is tired, but falling asleep is unsat, so we take it upon ourselves to stand up as we've been trained. When we find ourselves nodding off. Meanwhile, Bare End is knocked out, and our RDC notices. He stops training, brings a finger to his lips to indicate silence, then points to Bare End and mouths to us, "Tow line, get there." We all get up and quietly take our places on the tow line, leaving Bare End alone and asleep in the middle of the compartment. Then our RDC calmly gets in Bare End's face and screams, "Bare End!" Bare End jolts awake and jumps to attention. "No, lay the down." Bare End hesitates, then lays the down. "At attention." Bare End lays at attention, Close your eyes. Baron closes his eyes. The RDC then hovers over his face and screams, Sleep, Baron! After a brief pause, he says, Baron, report if you're asleep. Yes, Chief. Wrong. Try again. Are you asleep? Baron doesn't respond. Out, being standing. Don't wake up until I tell you to wake up. Then he had us retake our places and resume death by PowerPoint. After a while, it was time for dinner, so we all lined up, counted off, and departed for chow. Meanwhile, Barend was still laying in the middle of the compartment, possibly asleep. I don't know if he straggled down to chow or not. Soon after, he was asmoed and eventually separated. I think on some level, everybody wants to help others keep up, even when it's obvious they are dead weight. But after a while, you get tired of getting for the same shortcomings. Once that happens, it's a relief to see their lifeline cut. Navy here. We had this one kid we nicknamed Yoda due to his short stature, big ears, and an uncanny ability to mimic his voice, come into our division about halfway through boot. I honestly can't think of a person in our division who didn't like him. Reason he had joined our division halfway through is that he had been set back in training several times due to not being able to complete the 1.5 mile run in the minimum time to pass. Certainly wasn't for lack of trying. He gets further in our division than he had prior, and the day of the final PRT rolls around. He's pushing himself to get that run, and every single one of us who had completed it already were on the sidelines, encouraging and rooting for him the entire time. He finishes, I look over, and I see one of our RDCs slightly shake his head at our lead push, indicating that Yoda hadn't made the requirement. The utter look of defeat on this kid's face was saddening. We asked our lead push if it was possible to get some banner paper and markers for everyone in the division to sign and wish him the best. Our RDC got the stuff for us to make the banner for him as a way to give him a send-off to his next division. I was not the one in boot camp, but a very good friend of mine was, and I managed to make it a living hell for him by thinking I was funny. My friend mailed me a letter, this was back in the late 80s, to say hi and give me his mailing address in boot camp. He asked me to send him some pictures of our friends. So I wrote back and included 6 pictures. 5 of them were normal pictures of our group of friends doing things. One of them was a picture from our high school graduation, where we all lifted up our gowns, bent over, and slapped ourselves on the ass. The picture basically just showed 8 asses lined up, bent over. It's pretty funny, and we all laughed about it when we took it. Well, I didn't know his drill instructor was going to show them to everyone. Apparently, he opened the letter, looked through the pics, and made fun of them. Then got to the ass picture and asked my buddy if he liked man ass. When my buddy said no, the DI then said, well then why would someone send you a picture of nothing but man ass? And he showed the pic to the entire group. Everyone was laughing, and my buddy became known as Man-Ass Lover, or Mal for short. That nickname stuck with him through boot camp. About a year after boot camp, he was stationed in Texas and was hanging out with a couple of other guys he worked with when they ran into someone he went to boot camp with. That guy brought up the nickname, and his new buddies started using it. So my funny picture got my buddy labeled Man-Ass Lover for his entire military career. He was not what you might call pleased about it. Marine Corps Recruit Depot, and we were put up north at Pendleton for second phase. It was a few days into second phase, and we ate our first MRE, and something in it must not have agreed with me, because we were standing in line to get checked out for hygiene, and something else before we went to the head the last time into bed. I was at the end of the bay and started getting lightheaded and dizzy and nauseous, and knew I was about to puke as soon as the DI went past me. So there I am, counting down to myself the last 40 recruits to get checked out, trying not to pass out. We finally get secured to go to the bathroom, and this nasty fat recruit was in front of me, and I was like, hey, get out of my way, I gotta puke. He literally said, you, and I asked again for him to get out of my way. Everyone else had parted. Long story short, he didn't move, and I puked all over his back on accident. He flips out, and the DI runs in and was like, what the just happened? I just said I vomited and wasn't feeling well. Now I feel better. and then another recruit said that the one with the vomit all over didn't move out of the way. The DI told me to finish up and get some sleep, and then made the recruit with vomit all over him field day the whole bathroom. It was great. He was pissed, and I got a full 8 hours of sleep that night. But I did have the flu for like the next 2 days, but it was worth it. Standing through dress inspection with a wasp stinger lodged on the bottom of my foot. The screens on our barracks windows were broken, so the nearby wasp nest sent visitors. While getting dressed for inspection, bam, dead center. There was no time to remove it, so I just put on the rest of the uniform. To give an idea of what this is like, laces have to be pulled extra tight for inspection purposes. Too tight, really. Then stand at attention for an hour and keep a military bearing while your foot swells. Theoretically, I could have gone to medical, but it wouldn't have been worth it. Had already needed multiple visits for ingrown toenails, which the podiatrist had effed up the first time, leaving a loose shard of toenail inside my foot, which meant returning until a third-class corpsman fixed it properly. So our chief thought I was a sickbay commando and did not want to hear another word about any foot problem. He probably would have accused me of stepping on the stinger deliberately to avoid the inspection, and retaliated accordingly. Army, 1992, Fort Jackson. On the bus from the airport to the base, I'm sitting across from this very attractive young girl from Cali, and I strike up conversation. For the next 45 minutes, she rambles on and on about her boyfriend back home, so I let it rest until we reach the base. We report to our separate platoons. This is before gender-integrated basic training. And I meet a fellow recruit we call Jones. Jones is in the bunk across from mine and constantly needs my help with cleaning, uniform prep, etc. On Sundays, those who wish to attend church are excused while the rest of us stay behind and clean the barracks. It quickly becomes apparent that church services are co-ed, and people are using the opportunity to meet and hook up. Jones starts telling me stories of this young lady he's met at prayer service who he can't keep his mind off of. Jones and several others with similar plans sneak out of the barracks at night so they can consummate their new relationships in the grassy knolls. Meanwhile, Jones is telling me he feels guilty because he has a wife and several kids back home. I can't remember his age exactly, but Jones was in his young 20s. Finally, graduation day arrives, and I learn the identity of Jones's lover is none other than that young Cali girl I had met on the bus. You know, the one I had planned to hit on but couldn't stop talking about her boyfriend. Well, turns out she had been sent home or discharged several weeks earlier because Jones knocked her up during a late-night rendezvous. Jones begs me to keep my mouth shut as he introduces me to his wife and kids at the graduation ceremony. Never heard from or talked to Jones ever again. In U.S. Marine Corps boot camp, we did a lot of drill marching. After a particularly poor performance, my drill instructors marched us back to our squad bay and proceeded to slay us. As we're doing our push-ups and other physical punishments, one of my drill instructors sees an unsecured footlocker. Each recruit has their own footlocker for their gear and personal items. There is nothing worse than losing gear that is undisciplined, irresponsible, and can get you or your platoon killed in non-training situations. So leaving your footlocker unlocked is really bad. Anyway, my drill instructor guts that locker. Gear is everywhere. He starts walking down the rows checking other footlockers. He finds at least 2 more unsecured footlockers. At this point, he makes us all unlock our footlockers, dump the contents, and pile our footlockers in the center of the squad bay, like we were going to burn the place down. Then he made us form a pile with our PT shoes, and a third pile with our boots. My drill instructors then scattered everything. It took days to find my PT shoes because we didn't mark them. I did a lot of PT sessions with a shoe that was too big on my left foot and one that was too small on my right foot. To this day, I label everything that's mine. When I was in boot, our RDCs, Recruit Division Commanders, were to leave when it was time for us to sleep, usually around 10 p.m., sometimes earlier if we were lucky. Nighttime was our official, unofficial, not okay. Other RDCs that were on watch that night would randomly pop into our barracks to ensure and with the watch standers and make sure everyone was asleep and terrorize anyone who wasn't. then would report to our RDCs, and then obviously knew that this was one big game to them, and proceeded to chew our ass for getting caught. Boot camp is one giant minefield. Uniform, garment, ironing. Every article of clothing needed to be ironed and creased to include our underwear. So each night, there's always a few recruits who are hard at working ironing their rack. Myself and a few other jokesters would put on our ski masks and gloves, Chicago winter gear, and our PT sweatshirt and pants and army crawl under the racks until we reached an outlet that an iron was plugged into and unplug it. We would do this around the whole compartment, and then sit back and watch the frustration when these little fuckers realize their irons aren't working anymore, and have to plug it back in and let it warm up. Sorry for rambling, but in my head, this still cracks me up. In Korea, every man has to conscript in the army unless they have a valid excuse, health-wise or etc. The Army's boot camp is about 6 weeks, and it's 6 weeks of no junk food, instant food, snacks, etc. Most Koreans enlist in the Army during university, so after those years of cheap junk food, smoking cigarettes, and drinking alcohol, it gets to you in boot camp. You can also get in a lot of trouble if you're caught with any of the three while in there. Anyways, it was time to clean the base, and I was assigned to clean all the water dispensers. I usually didn't clean the dispensers in the offices because I thought I wasn't allowed. My staff sergeant comes up to me and asks me to clean his water dispenser. So I go into his office and he walks out to patrol. So here I am alone in my staff sergeant's office. Then I peep into an open cabinet next to his water dispenser and I see instant coffee. Not Americano, but sweetened milk coffee. I took 3 sticks and bailed out, hoping that my staff sergeant wouldn't notice. Then after lights out, I woke up to 2 other soldiers that I was close to with while in boot camp, and we drank literally an elixir of happiness.